Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience of SmithWeekly, including Edward S., Luke A., Nick W., Sean M., and Ryan S. We have a returning guest on the program today. Mr. Adrian O'Brien is back with us. Adrian is the Director of Marketing at Midnight Sun Mining, a Zambia-focused copper exploration company that is progressing the Solwezi Copper Project, which has a number of exploration targets on it, including Dumwa, Kaziba, Mitu, and other targets within the area that the company holds. Midnight Sun Mining is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol MMA and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol MDNGF. Adrian, welcome back to the program.
Andrew, absolute pleasure as always, and looking forward to digging in and giving you some updates on all this stuff. It's been a little while since we chatted.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have covered off a few additional things of note this year since we chatted, and appreciate you coming back to talk to us. And of course, we've got updates on some of the work you guys are doing there on the project area, and we'll get into that in a moment, Adrian. But I want to just come back for a moment and step a few steps back and look at this market a little bit bigger here. But why don't
Sure.
we get your thoughts on market conditions for copper as well as copper junior sentiment? What are your thoughts on outlook in the coming months at this point, given the global markets backdrop that we're seeing?
Well, I don't think you can step away from copper. I don't think you can look at it and say that the demand for copper is going anywhere. Certainly it may be softening in China a little bit. There may be a little less pressure around EVs than there was 6 months or a year ago. I like to say that I think some governments bit off a little more than they could chew with their timelines to switching to EVs. And largely that's driven by copper demand. Like at the end of the day, if there's not enough copper available to keep up with EV demand, how can they force people to buy EVs that aren't available? Like it doesn't make any sense. So when you look at the general copper markets, it's copper is going to be driven, demand for copper is going to be driven by manufacturing. That manufacturing is going to be predominantly AI data centers, and that is not going to change. That is a real thing that is here to stay. The demand is not something we've ever seen before. It's not something we're going to be able to keep up with. And it gets into a bigger conversation about project pipeline, deposits, looking downstream to where new supplies are going to come from and how they're going to keep up with that. And at the end of the day, there is just simply way more demand for copper than we've ever experienced in our lives. And it's not going anywhere. And that's going to drive the copper price. And from that perspective, I don't think anything is going to change in terms of the trajectory, maybe not quite as sharp as people were predicting at one point or another. But the reality is, long term outlook, it is absolutely nothing but favorable for copper. And it is probably, to me, the top metal in demand and the top metal to be looking at right now.
Adrian, thank you for that. And just give us your thoughts too, just as you look at the market for copper producers. Obviously, a different market today than the juniors explore co, develop co segment. You take a look at some of the copper companies out there. I like to always reference Ivanhoe Mines as
Sure.
a nice piece. Although Ivanhoe here is going to have additional metals coming into production for that company here soon with
Mm-hmm.
Platreef in South Africa. But talk a little bit about just how you see the junior sentiment for copper out there today, and when you see that that will start to turn over.
I think the copper sentiment from juniors is strong and positive. They're looking for projects. They're trying to develop projects. The pipelines are full in that sense. There's a lot of people exploring. But I think let's dig into two things. You brought up Ivanhoe, and I think that's a really fantastic segue to talk about the recent announcement from Ivanhoe about their basically joint venture, if you will, with the Zambian government. So Ivanhoe has long since been working in the DRC on the opposite side of the sort of country boundary from us. The border of the DRC and Zambia is let's call it 50 to 100 kilometers, not even 100 kilometers, 50 to 60 kilometers north of us. So Kamoa-Kakula sits 70, 80 kilometers north of Midnight Sun's property, but they're inside the DRC border. Now, operating in DRC comes with a lot of different country risk. It comes with challenges from a government perspective. It's a very, very, very difficult place to work, unlike Zambia. And in the case of Ivanhoe and looking at Kamoa-Kakula, they've had to give up 64% roughly of their project in order to move forward. That's bringing in a Chinese partner, that's the DRC government. And now Ivanhoe has just announced this joint venture, if you will, with the Zambian government, where the Zambian government is going to flow geological ideas and information and technical data to Ivanhoe and give them an inroad to developing brand new projects in different areas, rolling out the red carpet, if you will. And what that really tells you is it gives you a view to Ivanhoe's outlook on Zambia and Ivanhoe's outlook on those metals. They're not slowing down, and there's probably not a brighter guy in the sector than Robert Friedland. If he's going there, you need to follow suit. And then for certain parts, certain companies like ourselves, we're already there. We've been there for 12 years. When I think then taking that to the other direction, which is sentiment from juniors and junior outlook, you're talking about, it feels like every conference. I just came back from 2 conferences. I was on the road for the last 2 weeks marketing and meeting with investors and spreading the word about Midnight Sun. And one of the things that strikes me coming out of those conferences is how many new juniors are looking for copper. How many juniors are switching gears to copper? How many people are looking for copper projects? How many people came up to me and asked me, do you know of other copper projects? Are there other areas that you know of that might have great projects that we could work on? I mean, you can tell that copper is the big focus. And I'll give you a totally different anecdote, which I can't use names, but I will say in a recent discussion with somebody representing a major, they asked me on behalf of that major if I had any ideas about projects in Zambia that were copper unrelated to our Solwezi project. And when have you ever heard of a major asking about project pipeline from a junior, right? Like that speaks volumes about where things are sitting and how much energy and drive there is towards finding new copper projects and enhancing the copper pipeline. So, it's from that perspective, nothing but bullish. And when I think about the junior space and how many groups I know of out there that are looking for properties or have properties they're exploring, I mean, it seems like copper is the ultimate buzz out there right now.
Adrian, thank you for that. And while we're on that topic, let's narrow it up just a little bit to Zambia specifically. You've got incumbents there, you've got Barrick, you've got the Chinese are there, you've got First Quantum in there as well. There's a few others. Just talk about, since you and I spoke on Zambia broadly, roughly a year ago, talk about increased interest since we talked, decreased interest. Zambia is a fairly good hotspot for copper right now. First Quantum is, refocused, recapitalized in Zambia as well. Just talk about the increasing interest for copper development in the country.
Sure, and I think right out of the chute, you said increased or decreased interest. There is no decreased interest. The only interest we're seeing in Zambia is an increase. There are more groups coming in. Perfect example being what we just talked about. Ivanhoe doing a deal to come into Zambia speaks volumes. Smart money follows Friedland, follows Ivanhoe. He's brilliant. He ends up being in the same place or in the right place more often than not. And the reality is that's what we're seeing in Zambia. We're seeing increased interest. We're seeing other groups coming in there. I mean, you have Rio Tinto actively spending money, actively exploring to the south of us. You have other groups that we're hearing rumblings are coming into the country. You have Ivanhoe cutting a deal to come into Zambia. You have the Zambian government flying an airborne survey to open up new areas. We do hear there is news. Like you hear about the Zambian government talking about groups coming in and having an opportunity to earn into projects that the Zambian government also has a large interest in. So in other words, they generate the project idea and somebody can earn into their projects. And a lot of people are getting that confused and thinking that the Zambian government's trying to claw back interest in projects in the country, and that's not the case at all. That is the Zambian government doing what they said they were going to do, which is ramping up copper production. 75% of their export earnings today are copper. They're one of the top jurisdictions in the world for copper export and copper mining. So what they're doing is exactly what they said they were going to do. They're enhancing that. They want to move up further in the ranks. They want to bring more companies in and more interest into the country. And that's exactly what we're seeing on the ground. I mean, Ivanhoe, the amount of work that Barrick's doing. Barrick announced a new feasibility study on something called, it's a satellite deposit to Lumwana, but it's part of Lumwana, part of this big super pit that they're talking about. But that's like an $80 million feasibility study around a new satellite deposit that was discovered by our chief operating officer, Kevin Bonnell. As he was working with Barrick over the last 3 or 4 years, that's going to give them decades upon decades of reserves. It's going to bring Barrick to the forefront of the belt. And of course, I'm pretty confident that's Barrick's plan. I mean, they want to be the primary operator in this belt, and they have big plans, and they're clearly executing on that. So from an interest perspective, it's only getting bigger. It's only getting to be, more exciting, more groups coming in. And of course, smaller groups looking for entry points. There just isn't opportunity in the domes, which is the region we're working in, for other groups to come in. I mean, most of the property is sewn up by majors. We happen to be one of the only, if not the only, junior in that belt that's truly in the heart of the belt. But what makes it so appealing is this is a jurisdiction where the deposits are very high grade, they are shallow, and they're easy to build. They come with a lower capex because of the fact that then when I say shallow, I'm talking less than 150 meters from surface. They're stratabound deposits. They're not porphyry deposits. These are the right kind of deposits to have a global impact in terms of the copper deficit. So there's a reason geologically why people are coming here. And this is a jurisdiction where if you find it, you can build it. Why work in a jurisdiction where you can't actually get your project through to production? And this is a place where it can be done. So whether it's Cobalt, whether it's Ivanhoe, whether it's Barrick, the reason you're seeing all this renewed interest and growing interest is because it's the right spot to be.
Certainly a good spot for sure, Adrian. We've seen it both on exploration success and also production success as well. And we have incumbents that are producing right now. And these are core pieces of the copper portfolio for some of these companies. So I appreciate the comments there and how you're looking at Zambia today. I do want to jump into some news now that has come out over the past few months for Midnight Sun. First, the company has started an exploration program at Kaziba. Talk about the plans there, Adrian, what you expect to accomplish. Talk about the expenditure for this program, and then also what you see for timing to receive first results.
For sure. So, I think when you look at what we're trying to do at Kaziba, just to really quickly recap for any of your listeners that maybe don't understand what we're working on there, I'll just give you a super, super brief overview. First Quantum's Kansanshi mine is about 6 kilometers away from us. And at Kansanshi, they use oxide copper. They produce from oxide copper. They actually have an SXEW copper oxide circuit at the mine. And they have a smelter on site. The smelter produces about 1.2, 1.3 million tons of sulfuric acid a year. And they heap leach copper oxide to neutralize and get rid of the environmental liability that is the sulfuric acid. But what they also do is in that process, they liberate the copper within the oxides, and they're able to electrowin that and sell the plate as a separate byproduct. And from that, they earn between 250 and 400 million a year, give or take. It is a very robust revenue stream for Kansanshi. And that has been the case for First Quantum for the last 20 years. So it's a key part of their mine. Unfortunately, they have basically depleted all of their oxides now at Kansanshi, and they're in need of new material in a desperate way. And so we have a lot of oxide copper on our property in 2 different areas, Kaziba and Me2 being the primary areas that we're going to work. And we have a cooperative exploration plan in place to work with First Quantum and work together to get material outlined, defined, and prepared to be delivered to Kansanshi for production as quickly as possible. And that material is basically at surface with zero strip. It's relatively high grade. In the case of Kaziba, we have about 31 drill holes. The average grade across those 31 drill holes is around 1.3% copper. That includes a zone that has not largely been tested. There's a lot of room for growing that and building out that resource. But first, we want to go in and quantify it. Want to go in and do the requisite amount of work to bring that up to speed. And so after we did our deal with Kobold last spring, we decided that the best approach was to go after the oxides. We knew that there was an imminent need for those for that material at Kansanshi, and so we started this process of figuring out where to go: Kaziba, Me2, what the footprint was, what the potential resource area would be, and what kind of work we needed to do to define that. And so we initially planned to start with Kaziba because it's only 6 kilometers away from Kansanshi. That creates the best opportunity for near-term production, and they have a haul road that runs right to the property. So we thought, look, Kaziba is the perfect place to start, and we came up with a plan. And that plan was relatively straightforward. We figured we would drill about 150 holes, 50 meter spacing, 50 meter max depth. Because this material is all at or near surface, there's no reason to go deeper than 50 meters until we work on testing the larger sediment targets at depth. And that was our plan. And of course, this is all around the time that Kevin Bonnell joined us. Kevin has a tremendous amount of experience in the belt. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, all of his success at Lumwana for Barrick. Kevin has guided us to a slightly different plan. But we also, through the cooperative exploration plan with First Quantum, their engineering team and their geological team are basically guiding our exploration approach in order to give them the exact data they need to get this into a position to go into production as quickly as possible. So they basically took a look at our 150 hole program and said, this is really kind of overkill. This isn't what we need. This isn't the best approach. And so with their guidance, we've taken that program, which we had a budget of around $1 million for, and that has now changed into a combination of RC and air core drilling, so reverse circulation and air core drilling, something called ionic leach sampling, which is a type of soil sampling that's done. Probably one of the biggest benefits is you don't have to dry out the samples. They're bagged 250 gram or so. They're bagged right away, sent straight to the lab, so it's very quick. So we're going to run a grid of geochem sampling with ionic leach, and we're going to drill about 50 holes, which is give or take 3,000 meters. 2,800 meters or so. And really between those two things and adding an IP survey to that will give us a clear view of what we have at Kaziba, how big that footprint is, how big any potential resource is, and the room for growth, and what we can do going forward. We also have a separate target we're going to explore as well. And so that program dropped from being $1 million budget to being about a $500,000 budget. Was more or less cut in half, and the timeline is very, very quick. It's less than 60 days. So, that will eventually come to a close and lead us to some type of a resource, keeping in mind that First Quantum has no need to develop a resource study of any kind, a feasibility study or an economic study. If they're confident in the material, the grade, the quantity, and the continuity, that material can be slated for production, and they can lay out a pit plan and a mine plan and sort out the engineering to get that material to Kansanshi. So, it'll be up to us to create some kind of a resource that we can announce. But at the end of the day, we're going to get in there. We're going to do a lot of work, a lot of sampling, geochem, some drilling, IP, and we're going to get all of this done before Christmas. So the timeline is really fast and super exciting. So that's kind of where it sits today. And then, of course, when that's done, when we're finished at Kaziba, we'll go to Me2, which is a much, much bigger target. We're aiming at 30 to 50 million tons at Me2. That's the hope. This is in the southwest corner of our property, but we'll go directly to Me2 as soon as we're done at Kaziba and pick up with the exact same plan and start to add tonnage to this overall future production plan for Kansanshi.
A couple things here on this, and I want to stay on Kaziba and other issues that have come up as well on
Sure.
Kaziba. I want to go through that, but because you brought up the First Quantum planning, material will be identified. From there, what is the plan as far as getting the necessary government permits to be able to extract materials? I mean, it's not a new mining operation. You're stripping and taking this material to Kansanshi. As a result, talk about who's responsible for what portion. Is this something that Midnight Sun would do the mining and delivery? Is this something where First Quantum would come out of their gate and come over and pick up material. Talk about exactly the logistics and then what you would expect, assuming success. What would be kind of the time frame to see potential cash flow from this arrangement?
So, without diving into territory I can't talk about because we don't have a formal agreement in place yet, all in due course. Plan right now is for us to work together to get the resource defined as quickly as possible. That's what they need. That'll solve their issue. Um, the imminent need for this material at Kansanshi can't be overstated. This is very, very, very important for First Quantum. They've been very transparent about that, and we get it. We want to help them, and obviously, this puts Midnight Sun in a remarkable position to become a near-term producer in very, very short order. So to answer your question about timeline, 12 months. We think that 12 months from now, we can achieve production at Kansanshi on oxide copper. So that includes all steps from here forward, permitting, design, coming up with whatever resource we can at Kaziba, whatever number we can put to that, outlining the material in a much more properly delineated way. We know we have 31 great drill holes there. We know there's lots of oxide copper. We know it's a mobilized blanket. It's not connected to the sulfide source. It has somehow mobilized at least 100 meters away from any sources that we see as a potential. But really what we see is a plan where we take the reins on this initial round of drilling. Obviously, Cobra Panama has been dealing a pretty heavy blow to First Quantum and taking a lot of their time, a lot of their energy, and really tying them up for the last while. And so, it has certainly forced them to refocus at Kansanshi. It's forcing them to put a lot of focus into their operations, and fantastic for them. They just opened up a brand new sulfide lens at Kansanshi, which is going to give them something like 30 years of production. But the oxide copper is absolutely critical to their operation. They cannot be stockpiling acid, and they need the oxide copper to neutralize their acid. Not to mention, a $250 to $400 million revenue stream is nothing to sneeze at. So very, very important. As we go forward, it's important for Midnight Sun to be clear about the fact that we're not a producer. A lot of companies wave their arms. They wave their arms about going into production. They talk about what it'll be, what they'll do and moving to production and everything else. It is an extraordinarily difficult endeavor to move from being explorer to producer. The majority of exploration companies don't have anywhere near the brain trust needed to develop and operate a mine. It's a completely different skill set, and it's a completely different group of individuals that can do that, that know how to do that, that have the experience in doing that. And that's not Midnight Sun. We're explorers, we're developers. We are not miners, we are not producers, we're not a production company. And so we've made that very clear from day one. We continue to make that really clear. And our vision, which we share with First Quantum, is that First Quantum would take the reins on that. And if there's a resource here that they're going to produce, it's going to be with their own approach, and I think we would put ourselves in a position to allow them to take the reins, take care of permitting, go ahead, set up the engineering, take care of the pit planning, mine planning, production itself. This is excavator mining. So to be clear, I mean, you're literally scooping material from surface into a dump truck and taking it to the mine. But this is their material, their mine, and their operation. And I think we would be best served to make sure they stay the operator in every sense, and let them go forward. So that is the plan. Let First Quantum do that aspect of it, including permitting, and to keep ourselves in a minority position of some kind and allow them to do that and not get in the way. But at this point, where we can be best serving everything in this entire plan going forward is to get out there and to find the material that sits at surface at Kaziba and Mitu, and do it as quickly as possible. And thankfully, we've got a hell of a team appointed by First Quantum to help us with that. And between Kevin and the First Quantum team, they're doing an incredible job.
Adrian, thank you for that. And I agree. I think that's the best way to approach it. It's easier for them to get any permissions necessary to basically bolt on this oxide operation to the existing mining operations. I think that
Yeah,
makes sense. They already have the equipment, they already have the staff. Makes a lot more sense to do this. So it looks like,
absolutely.
cash flow monetization, if you will, for Midnight Sun comes in two forms. Essentially, besides exploration upside, it comes in the form of some type of a processing agreement where you guys receive payments for the material. The other piece of that would be maybe exploration success continues to the scale that a major company wants to just buy Midnight Sun. And
Sure.
so I think those are the most legitimate pathways. So I appreciate your thoughts on how this is being approached, and of course the development, and then that expeditious approach to getting a resource defined and getting First Quantum looking pretty hard at this. So looking forward to seeing those milestones come about here in the coming months. One of the other things was that back in August, the company challenged the rejection of the renewal for Kaziba license. Talk about what happened there with this matter, and then, of course, the resolution, and then lastly, the receipt of the verification report by the Ministry of Mines.
Luckily, a situation that was rectified very, very quickly, and I think that's a testament to our team. I think it's a testament to the Zambian Mines Ministry. I think it's a testament to the Registrar of Mines in Zambia, and really everybody pulling together. Basically, what we dealt with was a clerical error. We took every step necessary. We dealt with it swiftly. We dealt with it very, very quickly, and thankfully, it was a relatively easy fix. So that's back on track. Everything is fine with that. The license has been registered properly in our name as it should be. And now there's sort of processes involved with that are still underway. We've put out a couple of news releases talking about the site verification of the license. And that's just simply due course. This is something that happens every time you renew a license in Zambia. A team from the Mines Ministry goes out, visits the site, make sure you've been doing work, make sure you're not doing anything you shouldn't be doing, everything looks good, and then they come back, they write the report, and the license is finalized. And so that's the process we've been in the last few weeks. We put out a couple of updates. Because of the timing and the way that this is all played out, it's been a little bit difficult to get the necessary people out to site to do the inspection, but that is done. The inspection's been done, the visit's been done. The extensions you see now are simply the Zambian government working through their own timing. So they're issuing the extension. We're not issuing the extension. It's not an extension necessary for Midnight Sun. It's an extension necessary for the government team to complete their reporting. So it's not a problem from our standpoint. Everything is smooth sailing, and it's all systems go at our end.
Adrian, thank you for going through that and letting us know how things worked out there, and of course the work on both sides to be able to resolve the matter and continue down the road here. And we should see, continued as that gets underway and you guys start coming out with more news on
For sure.
working Kaziba. That's going to continue to reinforce to the market and get that equity back where it was before that blip in the
Mm-hmm.
road happened. And of course, you've got these bumps in the roads at a jurisdictional standpoint. There's bumps in the road here that can happen, and then of course, the global markets always provide a few bumps along the way too. So appreciate you
Well,
guys
and
handling that, and we were quite impressed with the amount of time that it took to get it resolved. It was pretty short.
yeah, it was less than 2 weeks. I think it was something like 10 or 11 days. And at the end of the day, you're going to run into these, like obviously from a jurisdictional perspective, some areas are going to be tougher than others. Zambia is a phenomenal jurisdiction. We're super happy working there. And at the end of the day, again, it's a testament to their team and the way they handled it, the way they dealt with it. Obviously we had a lot of support from First Quantum as well. This is an important project to them. It's an important property to them. But we had support from everybody over the course of that couple of weeks of tense times there, making sure that everything was okay. But the government was great. And at the end of the day, mistakes can happen anywhere. It's not relegated to Zambia or any other country in particular. Human error can exist, and it can happen in any place, in any jurisdiction, in any mining office. I've certainly seen it throughout my career in North American jurisdictions as well. So these things will happen, but as I said, it's how it's dealt with that really matters. And it was important to us that there was good transparency around it, and that people were aware of what we were working on, and timelines, delays, etc. But at the same time, we dealt with it swiftly, and so did they, and that's the thing that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's obviously a decision coming out of the ministry here, and I think that decision overshadows whatever glitch happened in the system there. I'm calling it glitch maybe a little bit too kind, but we've seen other jurisdictions where concessions had issues on a renewal or that someone attempted to provide the concession to somebody else, or there was a renewal technicality,
Yeah.
and then the issue gets reversed. In this case, I've not seen a reversal this fast, Adrian. Usually it takes many months, if not
And,
years,
and
depending
that's
on
what
what
I'm
it is.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think like very, very clearly in this situation, there is no doubt in our mind. This was a mistake. This was a clerical issue. We're not seeing anything nefarious here. This is a situation that occurred. It was a mistake and it got rectified, you know. So that's
right.
why it was dealt with so quickly. I think when there's other matters at hand, things can get dragged out, they get complicated. It can take a lot of time to unwind a lot of complicated things. In this case, it was clear cut, it was simple, it was easy, case closed, fixed, etc. So really, really nice that that's the case, and you know didn't really at the end of the day didn't cost us a whole lot of time. It cost us a little bit of time, but I think the big surprise on going from having a 6 month program to a 60-day program more than made up for that, and we took measures to make sure that this program is not going to be affected by the rainy season or anything either as we go forward, which you know, most people know that Zambia does have about a 3 month, 4 month rainy season. It can be very complicated moving drill rigs around as the ground gets really muddy and difficult. But in this case, we put a special drill rig on the ground that can operate in almost any weather condition and any ground condition. You know, that's what we'll be using when we get ready to get out there and turn. So, you know, we've taken measures to make sure that nothing's going to slow us down and we're going to get this moved forward for First Quantum as quickly as they need it.
So post this exploration work that's planned on Kaziba,
Mm-hmm.
just tell us where you see the company coming in with cash balance post the program. I know this is subjective, Adrian, but give us a little bit here. Assuming things are successful, when would you guys expect to come back to the market to look at potential financing?
The way that we see things for Midnight Sun today, now we raised a significant amount of money in the spring. We started out in March with the announcement of a $3.3 million financing. That the demand for that financing was off the charts. 3.3 very quickly turned into 5, very quickly turned into 6, then 7, 8, 9. And at the end of the day, we closed 10 million. It exceeded everybody's expectations. We institutionalized the deal. We had involvement from a lot of funds here in Canada, and it moved Midnight Sun to a whole new level. From a cash balance perspective, we're still sitting at around 9.5 million in the bank, give or take, maybe a little more. Um, we've got a lot of money in the bank. We're in a great position, and our budgets for these programs are relatively low. At Kaziba, it's $500,000. Our burn rate is generally low. You know, we do have a cash component in the Cobalt deal that'll cover all of our GA in Zambia. And then additionally, we're going to go and do some work at Me Too. That's going to be maybe $1 million budget. So, you know, you're still looking at, let's call it 7 to 8 in the bank at the end of the day. We have staying power. We've got a few years of runway now. And we see cash flow from this situation with First Quantum in around 12 months. We think we'll be in production on oxides in 12 months. We think we'll see cash flow this time next year. And so, you know, we're in a really remarkable position here that if we're right, if we can execute on this, we will not be coming back to the market for additional funding. Outside of some very special circumstance or special situation, we're fully funded. And again, that's a really remarkable position for a junior to be in. So we have the money to do the work. We have the money to get out and tell the story and keep our company rolling along here for the foreseeable future. And the way we look at it, we're done with raising money, at least for now, and we're in a perfect position now to move forward.
I see those two special situations really as some type of great result on this exploration work that's coming down here and the need to follow up quickly and spend more money.
Yes.
I see that as a potential outcome. And then also, one of the other sides of this is the negative side, the global markets, geopolitical events that cause things to go into hibernation. And I think that's the other special event that is really still on the table. So interested to see how this goes over the next 6 months or so, and hopefully, if everything goes extremely well, we would hopefully bridge the gap and get into cash flow by selling oxides. So hopefully that is the outcome here, and I think that would be one of the best outcomes I think we would see here, besides some type of super discovery that might come out of this as well.
Yeah.
Just with this, while we're on financing, cover the capital structure here as it stands today, shares outstanding, any of the major shareholders that you can mention, and then also where management and the board stands with their shares.
For sure. I mean, looking at the company today, again, talking about the financing we did, we were 20 cents when we did that financing, 22, 23 cents. We had a $20 million market cap, give or take. So looking at the company today, we've got 165 million shares out. The stock has moved up very well over the last couple of weeks. It's up by close to 25%. So we're sitting today at almost 50 cents. We're kind of around 48. I think we're trading at 48 as we speak. And that gives the company about an $80 million market cap. Fully diluted, significantly higher. There's about 58 million warrants outstanding as well, priced at 33, 40, and 50. And so, basic issued and outstanding is 165 million at 48 cents. It's an $80 million market cap. We've traded as high as almost 60 cents, 58, 59 cents over the last few months. But this is really a story that is just finally getting its due. The stock is still undervalued today. I mean, the company is undervalued on the basis that we have two re-rates ahead, right? You have a re-rate surrounding Dumbwa, the work we're doing with Cobalt Metals. Of course, we have a $15 million earn-in or $15.5 million earn-in with Cobalt at Dumbwa to explore a target for one of these billion ton domes deposits. And it's just a little sideline point. That's kind of the standard in this domes region of Zambia where we're working. These are shallow deposits, but 1 billion tons is what you're aiming for at 0.5 to 0.6%. And so, around Dumbwa, when we get working at Dumbwa and Cobalt begins to drill and begins to systematically explore the extents of that system, what does it look like? Is it, we won't know until we do the work. We have an idea. We've got a 20-kilometer long soil anomaly at 0.73% copper. I mean, it's an absolutely fantastic target. But how big is it? And that will drive a re-rate of some kind. If it ends up being a very large deposit, then that's going to come with a serious valuation for the percentage Midnight Sun owns, and that will give us a re-rate around that particular asset. We have 3 other stratabound deposit targets. We have Kaziba, Crunch, and Mitu. The work we're doing with First Quantum does not pertain to the stratabound targets that sit underneath at depth. They're only working with us on oxide copper, which is near or at surface material that's high grade. And so then you separately have our cooperative exploration plan with First Quantum and whatever that results in. If that ends up with a resource that can give us a mine life of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, up to maybe 7 to 10 years, that's going to come with serious value. That's going to drive a second re-rate around the valuation of Midnight Sun. And the combination of those two is not something you hardly ever see in our business. To have big exploration upside on multiple fronts and to have near-term production potential and, serious near-term cash flow if we're successful. And so, that really, those are the two big drivers now, and looking at what the valuation of that ends up down the road, based on that, particularly around the First Quantum piece, is going to be very interesting over the next 6 to 12 months.
Adrian, it sounds pretty good, so I appreciate that, and I think everything's set up quite well here, and looks like if there is any margin of success, that we'll continue to see potential backstopping of money coming into the company via some of these warrants potentially as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of those are in the money at this point. So
the lion's share of those are 33-cent warrants attached to the financing we completed in May, the $10 million financing. Those are 3-year warrants, 33 cents. And of course, they're well in the money right now. But there's also 40-cent and 50-cent warrants, both of which expire in 2025. We've already seen a number of those 40 and 50-cent warrants taken down when the stock was moving at a higher price. So there's no doubt in our mind that that's going to generate some extra cash for Midnight Sun, and I think it could bring in 10 to 15 million. So we're really going to be in a great position from a finance perspective, outside of cash flow from a successful move to operating on oxides with First Quantum. So there's we're very much cashed up, fully funded, and in a really great position to get going. And that's why I say, really, for Midnight Sun today at 48 cents, this is still the starting point. we're just getting started, and we're just getting the story out there, and it's being so well received. I mean, we've done a couple of conferences up here over the last little while that were, Midnight Sun was voted the top pick. Those are the CEM conferences that take place in Muskoka and Kelowna. Out of 60 or 70 companies, Midnight Sun was number one. Investors see that this is a really unique position, really unique situation, and they're excited about it. And everywhere I go to tell the story, every conference I partake in and presentation that I do is met with the same response, which is almost this, not too good to believe, but this disconnect between the share price today and what we're sitting on and the potential here. This is really remarkable.
Adrian, with that, I want to just cover off another area that we haven't talked about yet, and that is the update with Cobalt Metals on the joint venture. What can you update us on with this joint venture? This is over at the Dumbwa target. What can we expect here as far as work, results, the timing of those results? Do you see more info coming out of this joint venture partnership, say within the next 6 months on Cobalt's work, or what can you tell us on that?
Yeah, I think Cobalt's going to get to work. They've been doing a lot of preliminary work, a lot of prep work. They've been doing a lot of data compilation, which of course is a big part of their approach going forward. Setting up the geological plan. How do they attack Dumbwa? How do they do it in the most effective way, the most efficient way? What's the most efficient use of the funds? And you have to think about things like the rainy season. You have to think about timing, cost of mob and demob. There's a lot of factors to take into play, but I think the bottom line is under the deal, they're required to do 2,000 meters of drilling in year one. I think they'll probably end up doing something more significant than that. Much more aggressive. They have an aggressive approach on a general basis. And, when they do get the drills turning and do get rolling, it's going to be aggressive. They're going to go after it. And, we're as excited as anyone to see them get out there, put the drills on the ground, and let's find out what Dumbwa is really made of. The target is exceptional. And, you have a 20-kilometer soil anomaly at 0.73% copper. That's an ore grade copper in soil. And just to put that in perspective, ore grade copper in soil, you have a 20-kilometer long anomaly. It's the largest soil anomaly on record in Zambia. It's covered by a 20-kilometer long, what I call a vegetation kill zone, which basically you're looking at soil toxicity from a large copper system at depth that's causing vegetation not to be able to grow. You can take those two things alone and kind of say that that gives you a very strong indication that there's a big system here. But add to that, we have a host of discovery holes, and very significant. I mean, the discovery holes that exist at Dumbwa today, I mean, we're talking 13 meters of 0.63, 13 and a half meters of 0.77. That hole in particular is in the center of the geochem anomaly, and that is from surface with no strip in bedrock. Like, that is an incredible pathfinder to what's going on here. You've got 10 meters of 0.75, 11 and a half meters of 0.63. I'm trying to remember and rattle these off the top of my head. The point being, you've got, 8 or 10 discovery holes that are exactly what we're looking for. 10 to 20 meters thick. They're high grade. The average grade of the mines operating in the Domes region today is 0.59% copper, excluding what's in the DRC, of course. These are all exceeding 0.59% copper. They're all in sediment-hosted material. They're all at depth, and they're all within 100 meters of surface. So these are shallow. These intercepts are the right thickness. They're sediment-hosted. They're telling you there's a system there. So overlay that with this 20-kilometer long soil anomaly, the vegetation kill zone, and the discovery hole made by a major at the southern boundary of the anomaly, just across our property boundary. So Dumbwa is one seriously exciting target, and very shortly we should hear from Cobalt on what their plan is, what their timing is, and they'll get the drills spinning, and we're going to find out just how big Dumbwa actually is.
Adrian, I'm excited to see that work started up there on the ground, and hopefully they'll get a drill turning at some point here, and we can start to see how that looks. I think that one is another one that was one that folks, for me, obviously the First Quantum and Kaziba is a very important partnership that you guys have.
Totally.
And then the in-house exploration work is also very important to us. And then, thirdly, at least in our book, the Cobalt partnership and what they're able to generate there, because what you guys provided them was actually, in fact, a very good target as well. So there's a lot of different ways to see the value come out of this. So I appreciate your update on that. And it sounds like really the next 6 months, even into the end of this year and into 2025, should be quite exciting for the company as far as updates and news releases and progress on the ground. So I appreciate the comments there. Well, Adrian, short of any other comments that you wanted to bring up on the update podcast here, I wanted to wrap up, and I didn't have anything else to discuss on my side. But of course, anything you want to bring up, you can do so now. But I do want to ask our final couple questions, and of course, for potential investors that are listening in to the podcast today, the company
Sure.
has a market capitalization of about 79 million Canadian dollars. Why should Midnight Sun Mining be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors portfolio at this point?
A couple of things. So one last thing I want to touch on before we dive into things, but we can come back to it at the end actually, because I think it's a great note to leave on, and that's talking about the team involved, and I think how that speaks to the quality of this project and why certain people have come to the table. But let me answer that question directly. So why would this matter to institutions today? Midnight Sun currently has about 17% institutional holding. Um, Midnight Sun has been around for 12 years and has never had institutional support. We've never had analyst support. We've never had institutional support until now. And we, in this last financing, 2.5 million of that total, or 2.25 million of the total 10 that we raised was institutional. And that saw almost every major fund in Canada step in. And it also saw one of the most respected fund managers in Canada, Margot Naughty, join our advisory board. And I think what people have to understand is, from an institutional perspective, they're looking forward as well. They're looking at certain assets and certain commodities that have importance, that have global importance, that have the potential to be explosive and to create very significant capital gains. And when you're looking at the global, the global interest in copper, you're looking at the copper market, you're looking at the upside for copper. Anybody that's really in the know understands that there are just a few jurisdictions in the world that are ground zero for copper exploration and for copper development. And I would argue that the number one spot today is Zambia. And that is to do with the jurisdiction, that is to do with the environment there, it's to do with the geological environment and setting that we're working in. And particularly in the Domes region, it's the geological setting, it's the size of these deposits that are found in the Domes region, it's the grade of these deposits, and it's their simplicity from a mining perspective. These are open pit, flat-lying layered deposits that can be mined relatively easily, relatively quickly, and at a much, much lower capex than any porphyry deposit could be. And so when an institution or any brokerage firm or larger institutional group that we're dealing with is looking at this, these are exactly the kind of opportunities they're looking for. This is exactly what they want. An early days entry point to something that could be much, much bigger, and particularly when you have 4 separate targets for one of these large deposits, as well as near-term production potential, that is the ultimate situation for them. So whether it's a family office, whether it's institutional, whether it's a broker or a retail investor, if you're interested in copper, you'll be hard pressed to find something that checks as many boxes as what we've done with Midnight Sun over the last little while. So it really, I think to answer that simplistically, this is exactly what institutions are looking for today. So, I think when you're looking at this project, you're looking at Midnight Sun, one of the biggest things that speaks to the quality of the project and the quality of what we've put together here is the team that we've been able to attract. When I'm presenting, I always talk about what I refer to as our geological dream team. And that is, we have involved, both through Cobalt and internally, we've put together 2 of the top strata-bound copper geologists in the industry. We've brought them to the table and have them involved in this. And those two individuals are Dr. David Broughton, who is the chief copper geologist for Cobalt Metals and formerly Ivanhoe, and Dr. Kevin Bonnell. Kevin has been for the last couple of years an independent geologist. For the last 4 years, he was working at Barrick. But these two individuals, I can't say enough great things about them, their accomplishments, what they bring to the table. David Broughton and Kevin worked at Freeport-McMoRan, and of course Freeport had a big presence in sub-Saharan Africa for decades. And about 20 years ago, Freeport pulled out of Africa. They pulled out of sub-Saharan Africa entirely, or Africa entirely. And at that point, David went over to Ivanhoe. And prior to going to Ivanhoe, carried out the feasibility work at Kansanshi and turned it into the tier 1 asset that it is for First Quantum today. But while with Ivanhoe, David was credited with the discovery of Kamoa-Kakula. And of course, Kamoa-Kakula is, I think, probably the largest copper deposit out there now. It's 1.4 billion tons at 3% and growing. It is an incredible deposit, and David's credited with that discovery. And there are a number of other assets as well. You mentioned Platreef earlier in the interview. Of course, he is instrumental in the discovery of Platreef as well. So, David's a fantastic geologist, and I love telling this story. So I'm going to give you this little anecdote. David came to us while he was with Ivanhoe 8 years ago, sat down with our team over lunch, and he said, listen, at the end of the lunch, he said, look, I'm going to be blunt with you guys. I don't know how the hell you picked up this project. You're in an area dominated by majors, an area that should be dominated by majors, and somehow you have managed to pick up the best property in the region and one of the best targets in Zambia. Said this is a very valuable piece of property and a very valuable target. Whatever you do, don't lose it. Sell your house, mortgage your house, do whatever the hell it takes, hang on to this project and don't lose it. So of course we listened to him, and fast forward 8 years, he retires from Ivanhoe and ends up joining Cobalt Metals as their chief copper geologist, and he recommends that Cobalt come and take a look at Dumbwa, which is the target he was referring to 8 years ago. So really incredible, and we could not ask for a better geologist to be running the program at Dumbwa. Kevin Bonnell was instrumental in moving Lumwana toward this new feasibility study that they're running. Basically, if you look back 20 years ago, Barrick paid almost $8 billion for Lumwana. Incredibly expensive price tag, and they spent 15 years trying to unravel it, trying to figure it out. It was a tier 2 asset. They couldn't do it. And 4 years ago, they parachuted Kevin in with a mandate of turning Lumwana into a tier 1 asset, and he did it. Not only did he do it, he gave them decades of new reserves, and discovered a satellite deposit referred to as Lubwe, which is now part of this feasibility study they've announced. From what I understand, it's like an $80 million feasibility study. And, Lumwana is positioned to be one of the biggest deposits in the belt at the end of the day. It's going to be an unbelievable asset. It is now a tier 1 asset, and that is thanks to Kevin Bonnell. But I think the piece to make mention of is that Kevin left Barrick and is now Midnight Sun's chief operating officer. And he believes that Dumbwa has the same kind of potential to be as big or bigger and as high grade or higher than Lumwana, a huge potential. And to have these two individuals joining forces and joining us and moving this forward, there's no bigger stamp of approval than those two individuals right there.
The other thing here is I know folks will probably want to get in touch, who are listening in will want to get in touch with you and the company. What's the best way that they can do that?
For sure. Anybody can reach out to me anytime. I'm always happy to take calls or answer an email. So the easiest is to email me directly at Adrian@midnightsunmining.com. So it's ADRIAN at midnightsunmining.com. Or I'm always happy to take a phone call. And the phone number is right on the website. It is 604 area code, of course. We're up here in Vancouver, Canada. So 604-809-6890. That's my direct line. And if I'm unable to answer, leave a message. I always get back to people. I'm happy to do it. So by all means, if there's questions, reach out. Happy to answer them anytime, and happy to have a chat about these plans.
Adrian, really appreciate it. Thank you for the time to have an update with us on Midnight Sun. Best of luck on results coming out here soon. And we'll, of course, be in touch, and you're welcome back anytime.
Really appreciate it, Andrew. You take care.